Welcome back to the studio. Today, we're going to talk about skivers. We're going to check out exactly what they do and when you may use it on a project. We'll talk about a few of the different most popular styles of skivers, and then we'll share a few tips in terms of what to keep in mind and what to look for when looking for a skiver for your shop. With that, let's dive right in. Skivers refer to tools that are intended to remove thin layers of leather material. And there's a few different reasons we may want to do that. But essentially, it's done by drawing the blade against the material and shaving off a thin layer of that. And it's helpful for a few different reasons. For example, when we're making a belt, there's going to be the material that you essentially fold over around this buckle, and then that's going to form this part of the belt. If it's too thick, essentially the thickness of the original material, it's going to create a very bulky end. So what we do, it's called skiving with a skiver. It's removing some of the leather from here on these sides. So when we fold this thickness over, it's going to be thinner and then not be as bulky, and it'll be much more comfortable and visually appealing in there. So we essentially use that skiver to remove that leather. And since we're removing very thin bits of leather, it can be used in a lot of different areas. For example, if you're making a wallet, and I'm going to use this as an example here, and you're folding something over and you want it to be a very smooth joining edge, or if you're making pockets on the inside of the wallet, you don't need the full thickness of this leather, adding bulk and heft to that wallet. So by skiving, we could thin down this material here, still leaving the surface, but a very thin little bit under it. And then that can be glued or sewn in the wallet, adding, that pocket or other material without adding a whole lot of bulk and heft. So they're pretty great. You could use it for bag straps as well, and all different types of leather joining devices, edge that you want to keep down smooth. There are almost as many ways to use skiving as there are items that you could make in leathercraft. So let's take a look at a few of the most popular examples of skivers and kind of how they work. First up, we have the hand skiver. And this one, really popular. You've probably seen this. They've been all around. And each skiver has a positive and negative aspects to it. So this one's great because it's relatively inexpensive. You could see it's primarily made of a razor blade that's mounted into this tool. And to use it, what we'll essentially do is put it on the surface of the leather material, and then we'll drag it towards us to shave off a little bit, of that leather. And so let's check out what that process looks like. We'll kind of start with this little end, and you can almost see, we're shaving off that little bit right around here. Now, I'm not going to, go fully into this, this whole edge here, but when you press a little more and apply more pressure, we'll dig more into that leather material and pull more of that leather away. And the way this works is you basically keep doing that until you work the leather to the thickness that you're looking for. Now, the advantage is it's easy and inexpensive, and you could swap out these blades easily as well. The potential con is that it is a very manual process, and so you may not get a consistent, shaving of that leather the entire way. And so you may have to try it a couple different times, but once you get a feel for it, this can be an effective way to inexpensively skive your leather. Another popular option is the French skiver. And it's essentially a bladed tool that you could slide over your material to remove the leather. So let's take a look at that. So here, we set it into where we want it, and then we push it, scraping that leather away as we go. So that's just a very brief look at that. And so the more pressure that we put, the more of that material we can remove. And essentially by doing that, we could thin it out over time and at the right angles that we're looking for to fit whatever project we've got. So for example, if you wanted to set this into a wallet and wanted this edge to be thin, we could just keep removing this leather as far in and as deep as we want until we get a nice tapering, towards that edge. So these tools come in different sizes. For example, this one is 6 millimeters in width. can get wider ones and narrower ones depending on what you want. The positive is that they are relatively inexpensive and pretty accurate if you keep them sharp and use the right control. The downside is they are manual, so you may not get a consistent skive every time if you're making multiples of the same thing, or it just may take more time to get it right, given that it is a more manual process. Similar to this, we have skiving knives that are often referred to as Japanese skiving knife, and it is essentially just a knife with a wide flat blade. So imagine this without these kind of channels on the sides, and it's just a wide flat blade. And you use it the same way, just pressing into the leather, and you may get a little more control with them since there is not these guide channels on the sides. You've got a pretty much open free blade to, again, skive at the angle and depth that you want. Even if it's manual process, once you get a hang of that, that can be a pretty effective way to skive most projects. So you're working a lot, you skived a lot, and your hand's getting tired. What can you do? Luckily, as in most cases, there is a mechanized tool that can help as well as manual tools. So we have tabletop skivers, and there's a couple different approaches to them. One, for example, is a pull through, where essentially you set the blade height for the thickness of the skive that you want to do, and then you pull your leather through this tool, and that fixed blade skives off the thickness that you want it to. You could also get one where you can move that blade as you're skiving. So if you want the thickness to adjust as you're pulling, you could do that as well. The benefit being that the blade is fixed and you have a little more control over that material. If you want something that's powered, there are table-mounted tools that are used to skive leather really efficiently and really consistently. They usually come with large 6 to 10 inch blades and have adjustable skiving heights. So if you want something with a thicker edge, that's great. Or if you want something with like an almost paper thin edge, that's possible as well, and being consistent, which is really amazing. Once that's in place, you can pull the leather through, and then it skives it at just the right thickness that you're looking for. And the benefits of this are a very consistent result very quickly. It is a large tool, relatively heavy, though once they're set up, it can make skiving that would take a lot more time manually done in just seconds, if you're using this machine. So if you are doing higher volume production work or want consistency across every item that you're making, a skiver, a bell skiver or another skiving machine would be an ideal choice. And related to skivers, we also have splitters. And so leather splitters essentially are going to split your leather at a certain thickness. And so depending on what you're using it for, it can be a little similar to a skiver. And additionally, some have variable adjustments that you can do while you're pulling the leather through. And then it makes it less of a splitting, which is an even thickness throughout, and a little bit more of a skiving, since you can adjust that thickness as you go. Meaning you could have a thicker part of the middle of a strap, and then taper that down as you're pulling it out, getting it thinner towards the end, essentially giving you a really long, consistent skive through that material. These usually have very strong metal bases, are often mounted to a workbench or tabletop, and blades that are usually about 6 to 8 inches wide. Once the thickness of the cut has been set, there's an adjustment mechanism for that, so you could have pretty fine adjustment of that thickness to get it exactly where you want it. Then you just place the leather in the splitter, secure it by lowering a level, and then pulling it through. It's split as it's pulled through, and this produces a really clean, consistent result. And again, if you're looking to sort of skive with it, you can do that, because as it's pulling through, you can essentially adjust by pulling a lever up or down, which will variate that thickness as you're pulling it through. It is primarily a splitter machine, but can also be used for skiving activities, depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish. When you're looking to buy skivers, look for first the technique that you prefer most. In this case, there's going to be, we talked about a few different methods. This is going to be a hand manual pulling. This is going to be primarily a manual pushing. If you get the skiving knife, like the Japanese skiving knife, that too is going to be a manual pushing. And if you get a skiving machine, you may either sit and move the leather through it, or if you're using a splitter, that will be a pulling motion as well. So you really want to get an idea of what matches your style, because someone may love the idea and the accuracy that they have by pushing. Others may really prefer the tactile feel and the control they have by pulling. So this is one of those techniques that, once you try a few, you'll find one that you like. but I do recommend getting some practice with the different styles, and that way you could find one that most matches your skill set and personal preference. Along with that, another huge important tip, as is with most of the tools, is keep sharp blades. With sharp blades, you're going to have sharp, consistent cuts, which are going to lead to ultimately better results in the finished goods that you've got. And go for quality. This is one of those tools where quality will have an influence, and so the cheap ones are probably going to be more frustrating than helpful. And if you find one that's reliable and you keep it sharp and well maintained, it could last for a very long time. So you don't have to go, crazy and buying the most expensive thing, but also give yourself a chance at having a quality tool and buy something in the low, like the upper low to mid range if you can. And then again, once you get a feel for what style you like the most, then invest in a quality tool of that style for long-term use. So there you have it. That is the skiving tools. If you have any questions, let us know. If you have any experience or preferences around these tools, please share. And until next time, keep crafting.